What's up, good people? Mark Holmes here, and as always, I want to say thank you all for watching, commenting, subscribing, and being part of the Joe Blue Sports Report. Without you guys, as well as you ladies, you know that this literally does not work. Last night, I did the chip challenge. My tongue turned blue. It burned like crazy, but I'm still here. I'm a tough old bird. And since some of you guys are like, oh man, where did you get that? I know Jim Laws, you're one of those ones that said that you were trying to find them on Amazon, but surprisingly enough, Amazon did not have them. I picked up 1, 2, 3, 4 of them, 4 more of them. So Jim, I've got it. Just email me, and anybody else that wanted to get one of those, let me know. I do have some more if you really and truly want to taste. It's nasty. And I literally, I put it up in the camera. I'm like, can you smell it? Because it smells terrible. Tastes terrible. It's just terrible. But hey, who am I to judge? But I do have some of those. So I'm, on the road, and I think a lot when I'm driving and things. And of course, it helps the time go by as I'm getting on up the road. And I was thinking about our offensive line. Now, we used to have the Great Wall of Dallas back in the 90s, and then we actually had a really great offensive line. And you could say the peak of it was probably between 2014 and 2016. Right then, we had one of the best offensive lines in football. But from the time Travis Frederick ended up dealing with the Hillian-Barr's disease, and when he came back, he was not the same guy. We've gone through Joe Looney, Looney Tunes was funny, and now Tyler Biadasz at center. Biadasz is playing better, but he's no Travis Frederick. I know Travis Frederick, and he's no Travis Frederick, but he's getting there. He's actually playing better this year than he did last year. And of course, Zach Martin is still, one of the best guards in football, so you don't have a problem there. But we've all known that Tyron Smith has, his body has gotten Romo-esque, where it's just breaking down. And so with him literally having his hamstring ripped off of the bone, and knowing that it may be maybe the last 4 or 5 games possibly that he could come back, and with the Cowboys drafting Tyron Smith and Tyler Smith, TS, either way, playing. Last week was kind of looked like a rookie. This past week, he definitely took a lot of steps forward, and you can see that his pass blocking grade, I think, rated out at 77, but his strength really is his run blocking. And he's learning some of the tricks of the trade, and being that it's only his second game in, you have to look at him and say, okay, this is not Chaz Green. Remember when Chaz Green came in for Tyron Smith and what a disaster that was? Well, one of the problems the Cowboys offensive line had last year was we kept having to change the lineup. Once Tyron Smith went down, we ended up taking Terrence Steele over to the left, and sometimes we talk about having Zach Martin playing tackle, and then we had Connor McGovern playing for Connor Williams, and back and forth. And here's the thing about the offensive line: you don't want to keep changing it, any more than you absolutely positively have to. And every week having a different lineup is not good. So right now, with Tyler Smith looking like he's gotten better between week 1 and week 2, if that progression goes, I don't know that you want to change him with Jason Peters beginning to get into the fold. Because ultimately, if the future is Tyler Smith at tackle, then keep his ass there. So that begins to answer the question of, what do we do with Jason Peters? Now, Terrence Steele had 4 penalties last week. I think that was more the exception than the rule. It was just a bad game for him. He had officials that were ticky-tack, and it was the first game of the season. Terrence Steele played consistent all last year at tackle, and I don't know that I want to mess with that. It may be. You got Connor McGovern, who should be back possibly this week or the next week. They said 2 to 4 weeks that he would be out. It may be that you actually just keep Jason Peters on the bench, or you end up putting him to play guard. As Jerry Jones says, he gives us position flexibility. Yeah, in other words, he can play in a couple different places. Got that. That's the first issue right there. At least you look and say, well, we can bring him along even slower than we have to because it's not an immediate emergency. And B, you have a guy who can step in who does have experience. But more than anything else, here's the real question. The real question here is, if Tyron Smith continues to progress, and we see how much he went from week 1 to week 2, I don't expect to have that kind of jump every week. If he does, then great. Then the question begs is, when Tyron Smith does come back, does A, Tyron Smith get his job back to start? If we're in a position to make the playoffs, that the offensive line has not been an issue, do we mess with that group of guys that are actually playing well? Get the big fellow in, or does he become the backup? And then the second question is then, if that's the case, is this now the last year that we have Tyron Smith on the Dallas Cowboys? Tyron Smith is still relatively young in offensive line years as far as his age, but as far as his body goes, he keeps, you look at how many games he's missed over the course of the last 3 years. We're talking about 11, 12 minimum of this year. We're talking about 5 last year. We're talking about 14 the year before and 3 before that. At some point, you got to look at that and say, that $17 million salary that you're paying Tyron Smith, we've got a guy who can now replace him. Just saying, and I'm not telling us, I love Tyron Smith. Tyron Smith, I remember meeting him with Joe Boo back in 2012, and him being on the billboard campaign for United Way and seeing him out on the field and things like that. This is the hard part about football is you get invested with guys that become like friends and family, and it's hard to let those guys go. It really is. But football gives no F's about it. Football just keeps on rolling through. It doesn't matter who you are. And it's sad because Tyron Smith is a guy that you look at and you say, he is definitely a Hall of Famer. He's a guy who definitely deserves to have a ring. So, just my thoughts on that. Hope you guys are all having a great Taco Tuesday. And I'm headed back up the road. And I'll see you back in the man cave. Peace.